So how do you tell the story of a place whose first great civilization left behind these incredible cities, but no words we can actually understand? And what in the world happens in the thousand-year silence that follows its collapse? Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to piece together this epic history, the story of early India, from a world of pure mystery to the rise of new empires, new rules, and some truly revolutionary new ideas.
Our whole story really starts with a puzzle. It's captured on thousands of these tiny seals, just like this one. They're carved from a soft stone, steatite, and they are, without a doubt, the most distinctive things the Indus Valley or Harappan civilization left behind. Now, they show these powerful animal designs, but they also have a script that, even today, nobody can read. It's like finding a locked diary from a world that's completely vanished.
And that's the central challenge, right? If we can't read what they wrote, how on earth do we reconstruct their lives? Well, the answer has to lie in what they did leave behind. The silent testimony of their bricks, their streets, and yeah, even their bones. This is a story that has to be told by archaeologists.
So let's step into that world. We're going to explore what archaeology can tell us about this Harappan puzzle, and we'll start with their most amazing achievement, their cities. Okay, so a typical Harappan city, like the famous Mohenjo-daro, wasn't just a random collection of buildings. It was built on a very clear plan, divided into two distinct parts. First, you had the citadel, a smaller, higher, walled-off area where you'd find big public structures. And then below it, you had the much, much larger lower town, which is where most people actually lived. This deliberate separation, it just screams that this was a society with a really clear vision for how a city should work. And the level of that planning was, well, it was just astonishing. The bricks they used weren't random sizes. They followed a standardized ratio across settlements hundreds of miles apart. Streets were laid out in a grid pattern, kind of like modern cities. But here's the most incredible part. The drainage systems were often put in place first, and only then were houses built alongside them. I mean, think about that. This is urban planning on a massive, massive scale. And to give you a real sense of that scale, just consider this number, 700. That's roughly how many wells archaeologists think they found in Mohenjo-daro alone. In a pretty dry land, this shows an incredible mastery of public waterworks. It's what kept the whole city alive and thriving. And then, silence. After centuries of stability, this great civilization just faded. People left the cities, those distinctive seals, the standardized weights, the script, it all just disappeared. So what happened? Was it climate change? Did the rivers shift? We still don't have a single clear answer. But this collapse created a huge vacuum, and the subcontinent would wait over 1,000 years for cities to rise again. After that long, quiet period, a huge transformation began. Around the 6th century BCE, we start to see what historians call a second urbanization. A burst of new cities, new states, and new ideas that would end up reshaping India forever. This timeline really highlights that long gap, doesn't it? For centuries after the Harappans, you have the composition of these sacred hymns, the Rig Veda. But then, boom, around 600 BCE, everything just accelerates. You got new political groups, new economies that are actually based on coinage, and new cities popping up all across the Ganga Valley. And the key players in this new era, they were called the Mahajanapadas. These were 16 major kingdoms and republics, names like Koshala, Avanti, and the most powerful of all, Magadha. This wasn't just about cities anymore. This was about large, competing states all fighting for dominance. And all of this competition, it was eventually going to lead to the rise of one of these Mahajanapadas above all the others, culminating in the very first great empire of the subcontinent. Out of this whole struggle, Magadha came out on top. Its growth climaxed with the founding of the Mauryan Empire by a man named Chandragupta Maurya. He, and later his grandson, would unite a vast portion of the subcontinent under a single rule for the first time in its history. But building an empire was a brutal business. And here, in the words of Chandragupta's own grandson, the Emperor Ashoka, we see the horrific cost of his conquest of a place called Kalinga. I mean, just look at those numbers, the sheer scale of the violence. shocked Ashoka so deeply that it led him to completely renounce aggressive warfare and dedicate his rule to spreading Dhamma, or righteous living.
So how do you manage an empire this huge? Well, the Mauryas set up a brilliant administrative network. From their capital at Pataliputra, they ruled through 4 major provincial centers, and each was chosen for a really strategic reason. Taxila and Ujjaini controlled vital long-distance trade routes, while Suvarnagiri, which literally means the Golden Mountain, was all about securing access to the gold mines down south. It was a very smart system. Now, as these new empires were rising, so were new ideas about how society itself should be structured. Thinkers, mostly Brahmanas, began writing texts that laid down these new codes for social behavior, basically trying to create a divinely ordered world. At the very heart of this new social order was the ideal of the 4 Varnas, this divinely ordained hierarchy. So, at the top, you have the Brahmanas, the priests and teachers. Then the Kshatriyas, the warriors and rulers. After them, the Vaishyas, who were the farmers and merchants. And finally, the Shudras, whose job it was to serve the other 3. This was laid out as the ideal for a perfectly ordered society. And a really key principle for keeping this order, especially for the ruling Kshatriyas, was patrilineal. The famous epic, the Mahabharata, is really at its core a story about a massive conflict over this very idea, the right of a son to inherit his father's throne and resources. This concept became absolutely central to any ideas about power and property. But here's the thing. This neatly ordered world, it did not go unchallenged. The very same period that saw the rise of these empires and social codes also saw a profound spiritual and intellectual revolution that questioned the very foundations of it all. This is where everything changes. You have these thinkers, like the Buddha and Mahavira, the founder of Jainism, who offered a completely revolutionary alternative. They flat out rejected the idea that your status was fixed by birth, and they questioned the ultimate authority of the Vedic sacrifices. They argued that anyone, man or woman, rich or poor, could achieve liberation through their own efforts and their own ethical actions. And of course, new beliefs create new forms of sacred spaces. The stupa is a perfect example. What started as just a simple burial mound for the relics of the Buddha or other holy people, it evolved into this powerful symbol of the Buddhist faith itself, a focal point for devotion and meditation all across Asia.
Which brings us to a final and, honestly, a really crucial point. The story of the past is never actually finished. New discoveries and new scientific techniques are constantly forcing us to rewrite what we thought we knew, and they're connecting us to this distant past in some pretty startling new ways.
And this quote is just absolutely fascinating. Recent DNA analysis of remains from the Harappan site of Rocky Gari has revealed an unbroken genetic link from those ancient people to the majority of South Asians living today. This discovery challenges a lot of old theories about migration, and it connects that lost world of the Indus directly to the present in a way we never could before. You know, from a script we can't read to a genetic code we finally can, our understanding of the past is always evolving. It's a great reminder that history isn't just a set of facts to be memorized, but a living, dynamic story that's constantly being retold. The only question is, what are we going to discover next?